Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to Midnight Dark Stories. The night is deep, the night is deep. The stars are hidden, and it's the perfect time for us to gather here and dive into the mysterious and thrilling world of tales. Prepare to be spellbound as we uncover the secrets that lie in the darkness. Let's begin this enchanting journey together. It happened when I decided to experiment and walk through a forest I had never been in before. It always seemed to me picturesque and beautiful. I have to say that there were many different legends and bikes about this forest, but it didn't stop me. It was daytime and a lot of energy in my body. I was drawn to this forest. After entering the forest and walking a little bit, I passed an old bridge. Passing people in the opposite direction also met, but surprisingly there were only two people walking a little on the ramp. I could only hear the sounds of the river and birds chirping. I had to take a break and, turning to the river, I sat down on a big rock and enjoyed the nature. But suddenly I could have sworn I heard a distant cry coming from further down the trail in the direction I was going. At that moment I of course made the decision to go to this cry. I thought the baby was lost and stuck in the woods. As I walked further down the trail, it seemed to me that the cry remained at the same distance it was. It lasted about a minute of brisk walking before I gave up and assumed it was someone just walking down the trail with the baby. I sat down on another rock. Then I found that the crying that was going on in the distance of the river had stopped, as if it hadn't disappeared. In fact, it just stopped abruptly. I sat on this rock for about 3 minutes looking at the beauty of nature. Then I heard footsteps approaching, expecting to see another hiker coming down the trail. I saw some distraught woman walking towards me in a hurry. She came so fast and so close that it really scared me. She stopped uncomfortably close to my face and started screaming at me. "Did you see my baby?" I calmly told her that I just heard a baby crying and told her to follow me. We walked quickly down the trail, and as I chased the sounds of the baby I had heard earlier, I kept looking back to make sure she was keeping up with me. I finally got up the nerve to ask her how she lost the baby, but she just didn't say anything. So I turned around again and stopped when I saw that she had gone somewhere, and strangely enough, I found that she was on the right side of my tail. It only took me 10 seconds to yell to her a few times, but the only sounds were still the chirping of birds in the river. I decided that even if she got away from me, I would at least still be able to see her in the distance. I stood there for a long time, deciding what to do next: keep following the trail or go back and try to find this woman. I did another quick 180 view of the place we had just come to, and what I saw next may not sound very disturbing, but it bothered me more than anything else in the place. I saw a woman standing on the other side of the river, her arms dangling lifelessly at her sides, and she was staring at me intently, saying nothing, not moving. A muscle just stood there like a statue watching me. I made a decision right here, and it was damned to continue my life right here. I walked as hard as I could until my calves ached from walking so fast and long. I made my way back to my car after rounding another trail. I cut my hike short after what happened. I was really disturbed by it and even began to question my sanity. Like, if it really happened, it seemed so not real, and yet at the same time it seemed real to me in the sense that I lived it. On this day, I went on a solo hike in the woods, about 10 miles from my home. After setting up camp and eating, I felt suddenly tired and took a half-hour nap in my tent. Coming out of my tent full of energy, I decided to go for a hike. This one was a normal hike in a fairly quiet forest, until I thought I heard footsteps nearby. I could have just written them off as animal footsteps, but they sounded human. Considering how deep I was in the forest and how far I was from any urbanization, it would definitely be strange and unlikely to cross paths with another human there. I didn't bother looking for anyone and just continued my hike. When I got back to my tent, the first thing I noticed was that the zipper on my tent was unzipped and the door flap immediately opened. My heart pounded at the thought that someone was in my tent. After making sure there was no one in my tent, I went inside. Once inside, I noticed my bag wasn't zipped. Surprisingly, nothing was taken. I considered packing up and moving, but decided it was pointless. Whoever had come had already checked the place out and had to leave, so that there was no reason for them to come back that night. After putting my tent in order, I finally went to bed. A few minutes after I got into my sleeping bag, I heard noise. The first time I heard it, I had no idea what it could have been, but the second time I heard it sounded like a static breathing sound. I sat up and looked around my tent, and at that point it went quiet. So after sitting up with my heart pounding decently, I lay down, and I think I started to reassure myself that it was just me. But without closing my eyes for even 10 seconds, I heard some kind of grainy static breathing noise. Again, I started rummaging for my bag and found something I knew for sure I didn't have with me. I pulled out a huge archaic-looking thing. I examined it. Resembled some sort of walkie-talkie, and there was static coming from it. I instantly connected it to the footsteps and whoever was searching my tent, but all I was thinking about was why they'd put it here for me. Just then the static stopped, and again I heard the sound of breathing coming from the walkie-talkie, and then, in a deep, almost unintelligible whisper, I heard the words, "I'm at your tent." It's crazy how, in just a couple seconds, the whole world can change and how your whole body can be gripped by fear. I desperately pressed buttons on the huge radio until it finally turned off. Then I heard something outside hit the ground. I had a choice: stand still and protect myself and my stuff, or throw myself right into the pickup. When I heard something else hit the ground, I chose the latter and ran to my pickup. I had left my sleeping bag and other equipment behind. But did it really matter when my life was potentially at risk? Maybe it was some kind of trap that I left my stuff behind so they could take it. But one thing I know for sure, this man definitely meant to do me harm. This story began in the summer when my friends Emily and Mark and I decided to head into the woods for a week-long camping trip. We were nature lovers and regularly spent weekends hiking and camping. This time we chose a place we had never visited before, a deep forest, away from the hiking trails. The first few days were amazing. We explored beautiful and endless trails, enjoyed dense, rich forests and crystal-clear lakes. Our energy was inexhaustible, and we tackled each new trail with excitement and enthusiasm. But, as the days progressed, we noticed something strange. At first it was minor details, slight rustles in the bushes, shadows moving among the trees, trees moving among the trees, as if someone was watching us from afar. Emily at first thought of it as nervous stress or a figment of our imagination. But as time went on, both Mark and I began to notice things that were hard to explain. One evening, as we were unpacking our camp before sunset, Mark suddenly froze, staring into the dark depths of the forest. His face became stony and clouded, and I sensed something was wrong. "What's wrong?" Looking at Mark, Emily asked, barely containing the anxiety in her voice. Mark slowly turned toward us, his eyes full of terror. "I saw someone," he muttered, "out there in the woods." Someone was standing there looking at us without taking their eyes off us. We both looked in the same direction, but there was nothing there but darkness and the sound of leaves in the wind. Maybe it was a hunter or another hiker, Emily suggested, but I sensed something was wrong. At night I couldn't sleep. The shadows on the tent wall seemed unnaturally long and moving to me. Every slight rustle or click made my heart quicken its beats. I heard noises in the forest, but I could not determine their origin. At one point I heard footsteps. Something was approaching our camp. I climbed out of the tent and soon saw Emily and Mark, who were also awake. They had heard the same thing. We lit our flashlights and walked toward the sound. The footsteps were rhythmic, but not human. They sounded like someone moving heavily on the forest floor, occasionally stopping and then continuing on their way. After a few minutes, we found ourselves at the edge of a forest clearing. Something was standing there in complete darkness. I blinked to make sure it wasn't my imagination. Emily whispered something unintelligible. Mark dug my sleeve and whispered, "Do you see?" It was the figure of a man dressed in dirty clothes, standing in a clearing next to a small house, with his back turned toward us. We froze in place, not knowing what to do. "Maybe it should just be ignored," Emily suggested, but the mysterious figure didn't move. "Hey, who's there?" shouted Mark, but there was no response. We then made the decision to hurry back, walking a bit towards the campground. I turned around at the same spot where the scary silhouette was, and I didn't see. It would be logical to assume that in the time we were walking, the figure was already in the house, but the thing that scared me the most was that when we tried to find the house the next day, going around a lot of the area around our campsite, we didn't find it. If it wasn't for the fact that I was with friends, I would have questioned whether it actually happened. Thank you so much for joining me in the world of Midnight Dark Stories. I hope these tales have sent shivers down your spine and sparked your imagination. Remember to subscribe, like, and share your scariest thoughts in the comments. Until the next time we meet in the darkness, keep the thrill alive.